Cryptid Urban Legends. This is a two-player game in which one player will play a scientist trying to capture, at least to locate, this ginormous Mothman here, who is trying in turn to hide in the city. Actually, he's trying to leave the city. So, two players, one is the scientist and one is the urban legend. Clearly, there's a connection with the board game Cryptid and nothing else because of the title, the topic, the font of the title. But I haven't played the other game, the main Cryptid game, so I cannot compare. So we have here a small game, filler category definitely, and again for two players only. The game is played on a line of cardboard tiles representing different sections of the city. You start the game with only 3 in play, like that, and we have a stack of other tiles. So each turn, 2 of them are added to the edges of the board until we have a total of 7. From that moment on, for the rest of the game, each turn, 2 tiles are removed and 2 tiles are added. So 7 is the maximum size of the play area. Also, later in the game, some tiles will have the symbol here. When that kind of tile is added to the city, you also add a red token of this kind to the board, and those will be acquired by the players. When you acquire a token, say I acquired the token, my opponent gets as a reward to flip their wild card face up. We'll see what that does later. Also, however, these are good because they're the tiebreakers at the end of the game. The game may end in one of several ways. One is this deck of cards representing section of the city is exhausted, in which case victory goes to the player who has the most of these tokens. Otherwise, there are 2 other ways of ending the game. And to explain what those are, I need to tell about the presence tokens. These represent the possible location of the cryptid on the board. We start like this, again, with a really small city available to play in, and with 1 presence tokens. The job for the cryptid is to place as many of these tokens as possible, at least to place them as close as possible to the edge of the city. If, when the city is 7 tiles large, if at that point the cryptid has a presence on each edge of the city, on the 2 remotest sections, then the cryptid player wins the game. That represents the fact, I imagine, that the scientist doesn't know which of the 2 edges of the city the cryptid is, and then the cryptid is able to escape. The job for the scientist to try to prevent the cryptid from placing too many of these presence tokens on the board. If at the end of a turn there is only 1 presence token on the board, or there are 0 even, then the scientist wins the game. That means that actually the scientist will be able to win the game in turn 1 if the cryptid ends the turn with only 1 token on the board. So at the end of turn 1, the cryptid will want to have at least 2 tokens in order to be in the game. So the scientist may potentially win the game at the end of turn 1, but it's not that easy. But the cryptid cannot win the game before turn 3, because the cryptid cannot win the game before there are 7 tiles in play. And again, remember, 2 are added every turn. Also, the game has always, the board, the city has always 1 active side and 1 inactive side. At the end of a turn, there will be stuff, presence tokens, and these cubes only on 1 side of the board, and things will be moved. First, you move the cubes, and then at the end of the turn, you also, or later in the turn, you also move the presence tokens, so everything will be on the other side of the board. So the active and inactive side of the board will switch during the game, and the player sitting next to the active side goes first that turn. So in turn 1, the cryptid goes first because all of the good stuff is on their side. The game is card driven, and the cards will allow you to perform these actions: split, align, or shuffle. Again, during the game, you may be able to also gain access to your wild card, which is face down at the beginning of the game, flip face up when the opponent gains 1 of these tokens. So, at the beginning of a turn, we're going to have the main phase of the turn, when players will alternate playing cards, and that phase continues until all of these cubes that are the sensor cubes are on the other side of the board. So the first turn doesn't take long, then, because as you will see, the actions will target these locations heavily, and then once the cubes are spread out, then it takes more card play for those to be moved to the now inactive side of the board. The actions that you can take during your turn: you can play a card, or you can choose to draw cards from the deck. Your hand can be up to 4, and when you draw cards, you draw 2. Unless you have 3 in hand, then you can only draw 1, because again, maximum hand size is 4. So during your turn, you can either draw cards, or play your effect on the wild card if you have it available, or play a card from hand, which is of course the most common action. When I play a card from hand, I must resolve the action as much as possible. I can't hold back just because I like the idea. If I play the split action, I choose a location and I move every cube, every sensor in that location to the other side of the board in the 2 locations that are available. Basically, locations between tiles, or where you can place the sensors, or next to the edge of the board. So right now, these 2 are locations that are available. And if I play the split card, and I target that area, I must place the cubes that are here in those 2 locations. With the split, I must place at least 1 cube in each location. So that would be a legal placement, that would be a legal placement, all good as long as there's at least 1 cube in each location. Exception is, if you are targeting with the split, a location only has 1 cube, then that one can go in either location. That's for the split action. I suppose that I do decide to do it that way. There we go. The align card. I choose all cubes of 1 color and I move them all in one direction or all in the other direction. Again, always from the active towards the inactive area. Suppose that this is the situation. I play the align, I target white, and I can move all the white cubes there. Or I could have targeted white and placed them there. I could have done the same with any other color as long as all the available cubes do move. And they all need to go in the same location. Shuffle, I target a single cube and I move it by 1 location across or through or in the inactive area, the inactive row, before I move it to the other one. If I play the shuffle, I target that white cube, 1, 2, it goes there. I target this black cube, 1, 2, it goes there. And suppose so that was the point, we play to shuffle, then somebody plays the align, and they play it like so, and then somebody plays the split, and then somebody else also plays the split, and that's it. We keep playing until all of the cubes are on the other side of the row, so as you can see now all the cubes are there. Now we get to the hiding phase when the Cryptid is going to try to place presence cubes on that side of the board, which is what determines winning the game. Now, this is the phase that when I taught it to a friend, it just sounds a little weird. It's kind of hard to put in words, although then it makes sense. The Cryptid has to choose a set. We'll see what that means. And then for each space on the other side that is adjacent to a presence cube and that matches that set, the Cryptid player gets to place a presence token. So if I declare a set, we'll see what that means, don't worry. If I declare a set, those 2 places correspond to that set and they're adjacent to the presence cube, I get to place that. And the Cryptid player must do that in turn 1 to survive. And then you remove the presence from the old cube. Suppose that this is how we start, for example, turn 2, then at the end of this turn, the Cryptid player must be able to declare sets that match at least 2 of these locations and are adjacent to those, so that works. And suppose at the end of the turn they'll do that, so that's it, they're still in the game. Remember, if they are not able to place at least two presence tokens during the hiding phase, then they lose the game. Now, what are these sets that I speak of? A set is either based on a number or based on a combination of colors. If I declare a number, then I can place presence tokens in each space on the other side that is adjacent to a presence token and that is also adjacent to exactly that number of tokens, of sensors. For example, right now I declare 7, then this space is adjacent to 7 cubes total. That works, 3 and 4. And that place is also adjacent to 7 cubes. So that works. I declare 7 as my set, and that works that way. Or, suppose that was the case, then I cannot declare, well, I can declare 7, but that doesn't work because there isn't, well, this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Is it though? I don't know. Is it? Right, 5 and 2 is 7. Hooray, that works. I can place a presence token there. But this one is 8, 5 and 3, 8. So that doesn't work. I cannot place a token there, only plus 1 as the cryptid I just lost if I declare a 7. So maybe don't declare a 7. So instead of declaring a number, you can declare a combination of colors. It can be 1, 2, or 3 colors. And say I can declare white, black, and red. And ta-da! These two spaces are indeed next to black, white, and red, both of them. And so I get to place that. That means the first couple of turns it seems very easy because white, red, and black, well, that's what you're going to do, probably a lot of that. Later on, and this is really the heart of the game, the job of the scientist to mess up these patterns so that the cryptid cannot call 2 sets or a set that applies in 2 locations at least. And the job of the cryptid is to move the cubes in a way that they will be able to call sets. Suppose that, for example, later on, this is the situation here. This is the situation here. Now it gets, or like so. Now calling a color is a lot trickier. Calling a color is a lot trickier because if I just call white, there's only this one which is only next to white. This one is next to all 3. This one is next to all 3. I call all 3. I call white, black, and red. This applies, this one doesn't. In this case, then I would be able to leave, I'm still in the game because I can place these 2 tokens that are next to those 3 colors. So, and that's the general idea. You're trying to prepare sets where you can place presence tokens. As the cryptid, you're trying to mess things up for the scientist. So really the heart of the game, and here you have a player aid, and the run structure looks pretty complicated, but this is the heart of the game. The sensors, when you play actions to move those sensors. The hiding is when you see how many tokens, presence tokens, the cryptid will place and where. You check if the cryptid has escaped or has been captured. Again, not enough tokens or tokens on the 2 edges of a 7-tile city. If there are 7 city blocks, the scientist will remove 2, the leftmost or the rightmost, and then the scientist will act 2 more city blocks from the deck. And this is how you play Cryptid. You continue until the cryptid escapes, or until the cryptid is captured, or until all city tiles have been placed, and then the player who has the most tiebreaker tokens wins the game. Cryptid is a fun, light, mainly abstract game. Yes, there's a cryptid that we're running around, but ultimately you have those 3 main ways of moving the sensor cubes from one side of the board to the other. And so that's what you're trying to do, to create patterns or to destroy patterns depending on which side of the board you are. Nothing wrong with abstract games with nice art representing a giant Mothman, mind you. I'm not saying that as a negative. If anything, yeah, this game has like the flow and the feel of like a classic game, like a classic abstract. Has a little bit of that timeless feel to it, but also with modern sensibilities, because you definitely have a changing board that changes over time, that you don't have so much saying chess or checkers. And and it's card driven, so it crosses that boundary that traditional games didn't cross. It used to be cards or the board, or dice driven as opposed to card driven. And card driven, of course, has its own mechanics and dynamics because, well, you know which cards you played, and you saw a lot of shuffles, so you will not be able to play as many shuffle cards or as many split cards for a while until you get to the bottom. And actually deciding when to replenish your hand, when to draw cards, that is of course part of the deal, part of the experience. It seems automatic. Oh, if you refill your hand, I'm gonna do the same. So we keep the same pace, the same flow, the same curve. But I might decide only a one card, but this is really the time to play it when you replenish your hand. May give me that advantage now, at the risk, of course, that then before I replenish my hand and I play something else, you will have been able to do something else. So the timing based on the card-driven engine is really interesting. And it's a game that, again, on one hand, in terms of feel and flow, feels, again, classic in a sense. But it's very unique. It's very unique because between the asymmetry, the changing board, the fact that one player can lose from the beginning, the other one has to build up to it, and the way you build up to it, it feels very unique and very different from pretty much any other game that I played. I don't know that I played any other games that quite gave me that kind of like challenge there, made the gears of the brain turn and twist and change and shift and switch and go around the brain and do kind of the stuff that they do here. So it's a nice little filler that is a lot easier to play than to explain. And then actually takes a couple of rounds, a couple of plays really, for a player to start seeing the strategy. So if you're teaching the game to somebody new and you played it before, you're probably going to destroy them, easy peasy. But that happens to, again, a lot of classic games. Classic games that have ultimately a limited luck factor. Yes, there are times which, oh my gosh, I have 3 cards and not the ones that I want. But in the aggregate, you should be able to get a sense of what cards are left. In the aggregate, everybody draws cards all the time. So I feel that the luck factor is sort of like annulled by the fact that everybody is subjected to it, but you still have ways of managing and figuring out what can come next. So the luck factor is kind of limited, but the strategy is pretty interesting. And again, that will make a new player, will make it hard for them to be able to catch up. And maybe don't give them, the Cryptid side and don't destroy them in turn 1, because otherwise then they will not want to play again. So, I like the asymmetry. I played the game with an opponent, with a human opponent. I also play solitaire, yes, two-handed, just because, ignoring what the other side has. At least to teach myself the game, and before I realized it, I was like 2 hours in, playing game after game after game. I found it surprisingly engaging even as a two-handed solo game. I know that's not for everybody, but it works for me. But again, I want to confirm I also did play it against a human, and the human also enjoyed it, and they were destroyed by me, which is normal, as I said earlier, because I had that starting advantage. The production looks really nice. Now, this is a review copy. Well, when it arrived, it was in shrink wrap, and it had like a price label on the back that says $30. If that's the price they're selling it for, then it's a nice box, nice components, but $30 is a lot for the kind of game that you get here. But ultimately, will rarely be the crowning jewel of your game night. It will be like a quick filler. Again, it can be pretty addictive, but $30 for a 2-player only filler feels quite a lot. Maybe it was a typo in the copy that I got. But anyways, Cryptid Urban Legend. It's very unique, very interesting, abstract 2-player filler for that category. In that category, it is definitely an entertaining and fun game.